Good evening. Welcome to the Groundhoppers Guide. This is number 13. Like,
yes. I thought it was a lower number.
I'm pretty sure it's 13. There's the 3. We're going to chat about some grounds that we've been to recently. As you know, my numbers haven't really moved very much. I've only been to 2 grounds since the last time we spoke. I've had my brothers over from the States, so we've been doing like family business, which has included one of the grounds that we went to, which is Wembley, which is how I ended up going to Wembley for the first time. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Palace and Cambridge, but we're going to start with Mike, because Mike went to Austria and he's been to the Ernest-Happel. I knew I was going to screw that up. The Ernest-Happel Stadion in Vienna.
Yes. So as Arn just said, I did the Ernest-Happel Stadium in Vienna. So that was midway, sort of towards the end of.
In my head, it was Hapoel, as in Apoel Nicosia.
No, it's not that.
It almost went horribly wrong.
So I did the Ernst-Happel Stadium in Stadion in Vienna. It was a UEFA Nations League sort of deciding fixture, because it was that one weekend that the Nations League was somewhat interesting, because there was deciding games actually meant something, because it meant whether you was going to a final or you was going down or something. And luckily, actually, the game that I had was Austria versus Croatia. Sorry, should I say? And if Austria won, they would have stayed in Group A1, and if Croatia had won, they'd win their group, which meant that it was kind of actually quite an important game, as much as the Nations League sort of goes. So there you have it on screen. So this is a ground, I think it was built in the 1920s. It was built for the, or early 30s. It was built for the, I wouldn't say it was like the Workers' Games, which was sort of another multi-sport event that was going on like in the early half of the century, which was, I think it was heavily backed by the sort of the Soviet Union. So they hosted it in Vienna.
You could make shit up at this point, Mike, because I haven't researched the ground, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just riffing. But yeah, it was basically built for, I think it's called the Workers' Games or something like that. You can look it up. So it's a full-size sort of athletic stadium. But it's not home to any club teams, apart from when, Rapid or Austria get into Europe, really. Or any of the Vienna teams get into Europe. So, sort of going into it, it felt old, which is you're kind of walking in, and unfortunately the signal was pretty bad, so I can't actually post much more photos than this. But it's very grand, sort of, when you're in there. But like it's all concrete, like when you're inside, quite almost a bit brutalist inside.
It's very Soviet.
Yes, pretty much that sort of thing.
I'm never a big fan of that massive space behind the goals, though. When the goals aren't like on top of the pitch, which you do get quite a bit in sort of continental Europe, where you have the bowl effect. So it's a multi.
So either end of the ground. So where you do have the big gap with the athletics, that was where effectively the fan sections were. So to this side of the picture, I can't do left and right. To this side of the picture, that's where the Croatian fans were, and on the other end, where you can sort of see the red banners, that's obviously where the Austrian fans are. Now, it was a home game for Austria, but I would probably say that Croatians outnumbered Austrians in that ground by about 3-1. And or maybe it's just because the Croatians were a bit louder. I think there's a video in this thread. They were going absolutely mental for the entire game. There was before the game begins, they obviously read out the teams and stuff. Marko Arnautovic got announced for Austria, and I've never heard somebody booed so much, because he is Serbian origin, I believe, is like Serbian origin, so that wasn't very popular.
There was a big brouhaha about him making
a gesture against Albania, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Alaba like told him off, didn't he? Yeah, so like there was any time that Arnautovic got the ball, he was booed, like viciously booed. So that was kind of good fun. Yeah, but as a ground, it was. I've sort of heard from a few, because I sort of reached out to a few people who also in the community, and they kind of said that they'd done friendlies at the Ernest-Happel, and they weren't. They said it's a nice ground, but it's kind of not that impressive. I kind of would concur, really. It's a very impressive. It's a very grand sort of stage, but I felt that like that ground could have been in, it could have been in Nuremberg, it could have been in Bratislava, it could have been anywhere really, and it didn't really feel like it had I don't know, just that special thing. It didn't really feel like home. It just felt like just a big European ground, like kind of like your generic stadiums on Football Manager, your big athletic stadium sort of thing. So that was kind of me. The sort of the queues for concessions and things like that, they were going all the way around the sort of the concourse. So the concourse, and I swear to God, it was about that's me sausage. The concourse, I think, probably from the wall to the fence in between, because the lower part of the ground was actually just fenced off, a big metal fence. And there must have been, I think there must have been about, yeah, you can just about see it.
Yeah, so you see the fence in the background there.
So that wall there to the fence in front, there's less than 10 foot really in that. And that was a real sort of like, you kind of was not a crush area, but it was just, if you was trying to get anywhere, if you want to go to the toilet or you want to go to get a drink or something like that, it was just so cramped. And it was, it's an old style stadium. That's obviously 100% it, but it felt quite old fashioned. Really, that was the main thing. So not really one if you're into your sort of your mod cons, but as an atmosphere thing, with being sort of surrounded by 70% Croatians, it was really, really lively. Every time they scored a goal, they let off somebody would let off a flare. Somebody set one off about one block away from me, and that was a little bit frightening. That was
you can see the one up there.
Yeah, that one was quite far away. There was somebody had them noise bombs. I always love those. Not
we love them unless they get set off right behind you.
Yeah, they're great. But yeah, so like I think atmosphere wise, like I think if we go by obviously the scale you do on your reviews, I'd actually probably say atmosphere wise, probably 4 out of 5. It was great, really, really good fun. Sort of the trip to and from the game, it's great because you kind of walk through Prater, which is like a amusement park in Vienna. You kind of have to walk through there to get to the ground, and that's kind of cool. There's like loads of fan zone, like the fan zone outside the ground. They had like loads of people giving away stuff. You could get beers everywhere. That was really good. So the atmosphere and the fan experience was very good. The view like that I got, it was value for money. It was it was about 40. I think it was about 50 euros, so about 40 quid. For
what exchange rate are you using?
Well, it was when I bought it. It was when I bought it.
Was that before this trust?
Yeah, that was in the summer. It was about £42, I think it worked out as being. But that was a perfect uninterrupted view, a little bit far back, and I think if I'd been on one of the ends, I probably would have been a bit annoyed. But so decent value for money.
Yeah, with the ends, you're even further back with the running track.
I think but for the level of the football, it was very, very good because it was international level with 2 very good teams. So, Croatia, I think they've got to be a. I think they've got a good chance of winning the Nations League next year because I think they were absolutely brilliant when I saw them. But yeah, it was it was a very good ground. It just didn't have that special something. When I always compare the big international grounds to Stade de France, which in my personally is one that I always think is one of the better ones. And it didn't really have that for me, but it was still good fun and nice to get a sort of one of the great European stadiums ticked off.
Cool.
So
yeah. Speaking of great European stadiums,
yeah, they knocked that one down to build this one.
yeah, so I got to Wembley. Basically, my brother was over from the States, and I'd been speaking to him for a couple of months and saying we should go to a game. You know, we'll get a game in while you're over. And he was over here for 2 weekends. The one weekend he was busy, and the other weekend was international break. So I was kind of scrambling around trying to find something that would be fun to go to.
You don't want to take them to Matlock or something.
I just thought, well, there's a couple of options. Like the under-21s were playing at Bramall Lane. I thought that might have been fun. Leicester's women's team were playing at the King Power. So I was like, well, those are two pretty big grounds. That'd be fun to go to. That are easy to do. Also that I hadn't done. So it was like a double whammy. But then I thought, well, England are playing Germany. I wonder if I can get tickets. So I just messaged him and said, do you want to go to Wembley? And he replied with, fuck yes. So I was like, okay, let's go to Wembley. So, yeah, we went to go and watch England play Germany at Wembley. And Mike has been spending the whole time that we've been doing this rubbishing Wembley, saying that it's a terrible stadium and it's a complete waste of time. So, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, probably not going to enjoy this, but you know, we'll go for the laughs. And I don't know what it was, but like just getting to the ground, it felt kind of special. And then when I walked into the stadium, like the view that you get when you go up the steps and you come into the stadium, I've been into quite a lot of stadiums now that are sizable, where when you walk up the steps, it's like you can feel it. It's like, ooh. Wembley just took my breath away. Like when I came up the steps, I was like, oh my God, because it's so big.
It's enormous,
just cavernous, but at the same time, it feels cozy. Like you got like, I think it was 78,000 people at this game, but it felt cozy at the same time, as well as being massive. And I don't know, I just loved it. I thought it was great. I'd been to Old Wembley back in the day. Didn't go to a football game. I went to watch Aerosmith play there. But
I went to dog racing at the Old Wembley.
I mean, I love the old ground. I did. There's something about this stadium that's just it just took my breath away. And I don't know if it's the arch from where I was sat as well. I've put it in the background so you can see the arch, and like we walked past the Olympic Way. Before we started recording, I noticed that the red zone thing was pointing straight at Mike, who's wearing a red shirt. So I had to go and put a purple one on just for continuity's sake.
I am the red zone.
Yeah, quite. I'm just going to pull up the page. There it is. So this is Wembley. So I'm going to talk about parking. Because
you drove to Wembley, which is like
we drove to Wembley, which is absolute madness. So this is a map. There's Wembley Stadium. I don't know if the cursor is going to show up. There it is. There's Wembley.
Yeah.
And here is an estate where various people sell their driveways during the game. So we were parked somewhere around here.
Okay.
And I thought this would be a good idea. Unbeknownst to me, you see where it says corner shop food and wine? That's the only way in and out of this whole thing. So before the game, everyone was trying to drive into here. So the traffic jam was down off the page. It was somewhere over here. And coming out, basically all these roads were just full of cars. So if you're thinking of going to Wembley, don't park there.
Park somewhere else in London and get the tube.
Yeah, the thing with Wembley is like there's so many people that I thought it'd just be easier to just drive in and drive out and just in and out. That made sense to me. But we obviously didn't leave ourselves enough time. We turned up sort of around rush hour, which is not my brightest idea either. But I just want other people to know that this is not a good idea. If you're thinking you're doing this, don't. As Mike says, like a tube stop down somewhere, maybe if you're going to drive in.
My advice always, if you're driving to London, especially from the north downwards, is to either go to Cockfosters or Stanmore, because basically they're at the end of tube lines. Stanmore for Wembley is perfect because it's 2 stops from Wembley Park. However, on a Wembley match day, I doubt you'd get a spot. But I mean, you could park anywhere in London effectively and get to Wembley Park very easily. So
yeah, I mean that's the good thing about Wembley. But then the trains, when we were coming out, the queues for the trains were insane. So that is also an issue. I think we still would probably drive in, but we wouldn't go there. We'd go like further away and just walk further.
You're
not going to lose any time because you'll just be sat in traffic anyway. It was pretty cool that this is where we were parked, and you can actually see the
famous
arch over the top of there, and there's a little bit of a closer look at it as we were walking down the road. I kind of like this because it's. Have you ever seen Independence Day?
Yes. I don't like Independence Day either.
So it's like when the spaceship first appears, and it's just the clouds kind of part, and it's there. That's what it felt like when we first saw it over the top of the houses there. And the picture that we're sat on top of is the one from Wembley Way. So we went not Wembley Way, it's the Olympic Way now. So we went and had a walk around just to see what it was like on the outside. And I see the organisation and everything once you were at the ground was pretty good.
Well, it's better than Arsenal.
Oh, Jesus Christ, yeah. And then inside, these are, I wouldn't call them cheap seats. We're in the 60 quid seats.
Yeah, well.
The lowest on the tier below it was like 85, I think, for this game. The view was really good.
Yeah.
So this is a fine view. Could see everything. It was good. The pre-match, they did the anthems and everything, and they pulled out the flags at the one end, and you can't really tell it here, but they dimmed the lights to do a minute's silence, and it's eerie when they do that because the light is just here in the middle, around the center circle. The picture really doesn't do it justice because it was dark.
Yeah, they always tend to have a minute's silence at the England games because there's been a few months between the games. Usually somebody has died. Unfortunately, it's because I think when I did it, it was just after Jimmy Greaves had died once. I think one of the games I did. So obviously they did a minute's silence for that. It's usually they usually do have it, but yeah, it's very powerful at Wembley, especially on an evening game because they can drop them lights and they do it for concerts. And did they have like a light show thing beforehand for you, or probably not really with this? I assume
they might possibly have done. We turned up really close to kickoff because of the parking issues. So we struggled a little bit. And when we got there, we basically got told we had to be there between 6:15 and 7:15, quarter to 7, and we actually got there at I think it was 7:30, and it was like a 7:45 kickoff. So 7:45, right? I can't even remember, but we got in, we got settled down in the seats.
It was 7:45 because I watched it at 8:45 in Germany.
Okay. And the players came out about a minute later. So it was pretty much ideal in terms of not having to wait around for stuff, but it did feel like a bit of a panic to get into the seats for kickoff.
It was a great game,
78,000 people. And as I think I messaged you saying like my positive review of the stadium had a lot to do with how good the game was. So like
Yeah,
the first half was decent, but the second half was ridiculous. With Germany taking a 2-goal lead, England fighting back, getting the penalty and scoring it and leading 3-2. And then they threw it away, which was you kind of got like this whole roller coaster of like what it's like to be a football fan in one game, which I said to my sister-in-law who was there, she's never been to a football game before. I said, if this doesn't make you like
it
with the sport, then nothing will. And obviously they live in Texas, so they like as she was leaving, I said that to her. She said she was going to go and watch Austin play, like Austin, the football team.
Yeah,
they play in MLS, so she was talking about going to get tickets to that. So that is pretty big. Turn somebody into a football fan with that game, because that was a crazy game of football. It's an amazing stadium. Like I kind of get what you're saying about it, because it's very new, but it also feels like it has a lot of history already, just because so much business has gone down in it since it's opened.
I think the problem is I've not had a game like that, like you've just had. I've done 3 games at Wembley. I've done a losing playoff final for Luton versus York City, which was horrible. Probably one of the worst games of football I've seen in my life, because I just hated every minute of it. I did a USA versus England friendly, which was Wayne Rooney's last match. That was quite interesting, but that was like that was quite fun, but it was a bit of a damp squib. And the other one was a 1-1 between England and Hungary, which was pretty depressing. So yeah, I've not had a game against Germany with 3 scoring goals. So maybe that's me. And I've not had like an FA Cup win or something like, like some people have.
I feel like this is the kind of ground where you'd have good memories of it if something good happened in it.
Yeah.
But you kind of understand the.
I get it, but it's fun.
Depends on what your experience was, but just having the goals go in and having the comeback and everything, and seeing people like literally jumping around and hugging each other, and it just felt crazy because there was so many people in there, and it was completely different to anything I'd experienced like in any game, in any ground. Just to have that sheer size of it. And I can see how some people, I've heard people say that their favourite ground is Wembley because it's, and I got that feeling from it. So I had a great time. I really enjoyed it.
It's not my least favourite ground. It's just, I don't know. It's just definitely not my favourite. Yeah. So.
Okay, right. So that was Wembley. I had a great time.
Yeah. And it was a great game. I watched that game in Karls Brauhaus in Stuttgart. That was very good.
I thought it was going to be a disaster because they played Italy in Italy on the Friday.
Dreadful.
Lost 1-0. And from what I can remember, it was a bad game. It was on the TV in the pub, so I was kind of turning around to look at it every now and again. That basically ruined the game as a competitive one, because it could have been like whoever loses gets relegated out of the Nations League. I mean, I keep saying nobody cares about it, but I think it was more a case of it was England v Germany, and that was enough.
That game was for pride, because neither teams have performed particularly well, so that was a game for pride, really.
And well, they both got donnied by Hungary. So.
Yeah. At that point, really, what can you say? So, yeah, so it was for bragging rights more than anything, wasn't it, really?
Okay, so following that, we're going to move across town to South London.
South London.
So
Selhurst Park. Yeah, we're jumping around a bit chronologically. This was a sort of that on the Saturday beforehand, I did do another ground. I did Berkhamsted, which was nice. It was by the river along the Grand Union Canal. Look on my Twitter, you'll find a thread. That was quite nice. But on the Sunday, I did. So this was the Sunday after the Queen died. So the weekend before, I planned to do the WSL opening weekend, and I plan to do Spurs on the Saturday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and I plan to do Chelsea women on the Sunday at Stamford Bridge. So I had a great weekend planned. Unfortunately, that all got cancelled. So, but luckily, I completely by accident discovered that Palace women were playing at Selhurst Park on the Sunday afterwards, playing at Southampton. And Crystal Palace, as you would know, Arn, it's an incredibly difficult ground to get tickets for. Being in the Premier League, and having a somewhat small ground is basically recipe for never being able to buy tickets for it, because you have to be in the membership schemes, you have to go on your ballots, and it's impossible unless you can maybe get a under 21s game or maybe an early season Carabao Cup game or something like that. You're pretty stuffed, really.
It was like when Brentford played that. I can't remember who it was. They played somebody in the Carabao Cup.
Yes.
And all the Groundhoppers that I knew were there because none of them had been to that ground before, because it was brand new and they couldn't get tickets because it was a hot ticket.
Well, it's why we so desperately went to Spain versus Denmark, because it was it was one of the only opportunities to do it. So so I managed to get Selhurst Park ticked off. So it was Crystal Palace women versus Southampton. They only opened one stand, so I think there's a thread that Arn can bring up, but they only opened one stand, so it was kind of like playing in a completely empty ground. So this is obviously the outside of the ground. So this Palace is another one of the Archibald Leach grounds. So it's one of the sort of the classic style, much like Ibrox at Villa Park. It's all by the same guy. And it's the way you get into the ground. So I think it might be along this thing. So you walk around the outside of that, and then the ground just disappears behind some houses, and you're like, "Where the hell's this gone?"
Have I taken a wrong turn?
People have the audacity to complain about Luton Town, but this ground just disappears, and you have to basically walk through a Sainsbury's car park to get to where them gates are. So that was a bit weird. But you go around to the outside, and you got this, the big grand sort of along, like a lot of the grounds in the Premier League now. It has like the fan zone, so that was sort of always hanging around. And I got the impression that they weren't really expecting. It was almost as if they had stewards who weren't used to. It was like this was a training go for stewards, because they kept on. They told us all to queue up against this entrance 11, because they said they only had one stand picked up. We go through, you scanned your ticket, and then we walked into the bar, which was, I think it was actually the VIP bar, because like you had a glass for your pint, which was shocking for football. There is a picture of that. Look, glass pint. So yeah, we were sort of in the VIP bar for that.
I don't think I've ever seen a glass pint at the. I think we might have had one at
Old Trafford.
No, I didn't have a beer there. I was going to say the place with the castle in the background, but no, we didn't. It was plastic.
Yeah. So we kind of get ushered into this VIP bar, and I'm like, okay, great, that's where we are. And then all of a sudden, this steward comes in and is like, no, you can't be in here. You all got to go out, and you've got to go through. You've got to leave the ground and go back through entrance 15. And we're like, what the, So they shepherd everybody out, and then I queue up at 15, and then I scan my ticket again, and it won't work. And they're like, we got told to go here. No, you got to go back to 11. So go back to 11. We're all now queuing again for the third time. And now our tickets won't work this time. So this one steward gets an absolute bollocking by these people, because they're like, "You've told all these people to go." Yeah. So ended up having to go back. We eventually got in.
Sounds like a bit of a palaver there.
It was a bit of a palaver. If there was actually a bigger crowd than there was, I think there would have been, it would have been pretty trouble. But thankfully, it's a family crowd. It was, it was.
But you got inside. We
got in eventually. So this is obviously the inside of Selhurst Park, and it's very eerie being in a ground where you just three sides are just completely empty. It's very odd, especially a ground of this size. So the stand we were in was, I think it's probably one of the oldest ones, but it's basically behind where the directors, but the technical areas are. So it was kind of quiet enough that you could sort of hear the coaches shouting during the match, which was I always quite like to hear, but don't usually expect it at a ground of this size. But yeah, it was, I think the game of football was perfectly fine. There were, like, Southampton were a lot better going forward than Palace, and I think it ended up being 2-1 to Southampton.
I have no idea what the score is.
Yeah, I've got it on here somewhere, but it ended up being 2-1 to Southampton. That was right. So this is women's championship, so it wasn't WSL, but there were a handful of internationals for, like, I think there was a couple of Wales internationals, and I think there was an Irish international as well. So did see a few internationals, but it was, the level was fine. But yeah, it was just really weird watching a game in a completely empty stadium, really. I think the final attendance was about 1,800, which was actually a Crystal Palace women's record.
Decent. It's better than the quarter of a stand that I was sat in at St Andrews.
Yeah.
That was just rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, we got the full stand, which was quite nice. But yeah, it was 1,800, but that was actually a record for Crystal Palace women's games. So with that in mind, that's kind of cool, because they normally play at Bromley, which we've obviously talked about in the past. So yeah, that was Crystal Palace.
It does kind of make sense for him to play at a ground like Bromley, where it's kind of a better fit for the number of fans that they've got coming. But I do like that they are playing the women's games at the men's ground, or the main ground.
Well, I believe it's mandated in the WSL now. You have to play 2 a season, I think. I think it is actually part of the rules now, but I don't know.
Well, it depends what crowds you're doing, I guess, because, like, I mean, I think some of the teams are doing better than others in terms of attendance. So.
Well, Arsenal women's always done quite well, and then when they do the North London derby, they tend to, they always do that in the Emirates, and they tend to get about 20,000-30,000 for them. So yeah, so yeah, that was Palace. I'd like to go back sort of in a bit more of a livelier game, but I don't know how likely that is, to be honest. So that's
the problem, isn't it? It's trying to get into Palace is not easy. We seem to encounter that with Premier League grounds. It's kind of tricky to get into some of them for a competitive game. I'm really happy that we got to go to Arsenal and see, like, a fun game. It wasn't necessarily a competitive one because Sevilla didn't turn up, but at least we got to see, like, a good game.
That was the full squad. It was. Yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't.
Yeah.
They turned up for a kick around in the park, and Arsenal were like, "We're going to win the league." So it was a bit different. Yeah, it's tricky to get into those grounds. So, look, if you are on a similar ground hopping adventure as us, it's a case of looking for those under 21 games and the women's games.
Yeah,
Carabao Cup early rounds. Maybe
I was hoping
if they draw a non-league team or something, you're more likely to get a ticket.
I was hoping we might have got a random international game in November at a ground in the UK, because usually before a World Cup you do get something a little bit odd. Sometimes at Arsenal, sometimes at Fulham, QPR, you'll get like Nigeria versus Belgium or something like that or Nigeria versus Honduras or something in London or something. That's always a
bill for that.
Yeah, I saw USA Colombia in Fulham. That was great. It was like one of the best games I've been to.
So back on track. I have also been to one of the ground, and I feel like this is a nice contrast to the enormous international stadia that we've been talking about for the majority of the episode. Because I went to the Abbey Stadium at Cambridge, which is, if I'm being polite, not quite as spectacular as some of the other.
That's fair enough.
So we'll do the parking. So we parked at the train station, which is quite a far away. My recommendation, if you're going to Cambridge, is to go to the Abbey Leisure Complex, which is just to the south, and park somewhere around there. But also, if you're going into Cambridge in a car, I would recommend adding at least an hour to your journey time.
Yeah, park and ride.
Because going through Cambridge was almost as painful as going to Wembley. It took us like half an hour to go 2 miles.
Yeah, Cambridge hates cars.
Cambridge is a horrendous place for cars. I saw more people on bikes in Cambridge than I normally do when we go to the Philippines. So and there's a lot over there as well. There are a staggering number of bikes per person in Cambridge. It's unreal. So yeah, my recommendation is to go into this little leisure complex here. They've got a car park there, and then just walk into the ground from the back.
Or get the train.
Job done. Or get the train. Yeah. The train. I walked from the train station to the ground anyway because we parked at the train station. So it was just one of those things. Then Cambridge for me is kind of out the way. After I'd logged it, I discovered it's the most easterly ground I've been to anywhere. I haven't really done anything outside the UK, so
you're playing that down, but my most westerly ground is Walsall.
That's fair.
Which isn't even the most westerly ground in Birmingham.
One of the good things about driving through Cambridge is I got to drive past Parker's Piece, where the first Cambridge rules game took place. So a little bit of a historic piece of land there in the middle of town. There's a lot of students just lazing around on it.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
Yeah. So here we are at the Abbey Stadium. The way into the ground was annoying because when we got there, there's like this big field and like what looks like the way into the stadium. So we just walked along there and discovered that was the away fans. Yeah. So we're like, oh, we'll just carry on walking around then. And you can't.
Yeah.
So you can't walk around there. So we had to come back out to the road. Then we went into the bit which looks like it's the main stand. So we walked into there. And you can't go into there because that's the right side of the main stand. So we had to come out again and then go down an alleyway, which is how we finally got into the ground. It's snug. It's very snug. So as I walked in, this is me standing in the corner. So off to the right is like the main bulk of the home fans. Opposite over the way is Derby County. Their visitors today, as you can see, it's pretty much packed out because we got there at like 5-3.
Yeah, I've been at Cambridge as an away fan, and that away pen is pretty packed out as well.
It was full. And
actually, when
I'm sort of here, so like I'm right next to the terrace at this end. And then there's a terrace in the background there that is also all terraced. So you've got like half of the ground is standing. But we're in the like the main stand. So there's all these signs saying like go this way for various different blocks. So we followed the thing and we went into the underground of the stand and we're going along it and we come up and we're like in completely the wrong block. So we go back down and open a door and just walk through a load of function rooms and stuff. And I'm like, what? Where are we? And we get down to the end. I open the door and I can hear football boots clacking around. I'm basically in the locker rooms at this point. I close that door and there's a guy behind me in a suit goes, "Can I help you?" Like, what are you doing here? And I was like, "I'm looking for block E." And block F, I think it was. And he goes like, "Oh yeah, come out this way, go down there, up the stairs." I'm like, "That's not what the sign said." The sign was pointing this way.
I like the idea you would have walked in and just give them a team talk or something.
Yeah, sort of. All right, lads. Want to see a nice high press today? Anyway, so we went out the way to go up the steps to get into the stand, and we ran headlong into the mascot, Marvin the Moose. So Maria wanted the picture taken with him. So that's Marvin the Moose.
Love Marvin the Moose. What a mascot.
Big Marvin the Moose fan. He's gone pretty high up in the rankings for mascot of the season. So this is where we were sat. So it was very crowded. There were not a lot of free seats, and I was where we sat. There was a couple of kids sat there, and it's like they're basically spread out, and we had to kind of budge them along and then sat down. That great big post with G on the top is completely obscuring the goal to my right. One of the perks of one of these older grounds. The other side is much better. This is the end with the Derby fans. So you've been in there, Mike. You can.
No, I've not been in that one. I've been in the one that's slightly on the side.
Oh, okay. So I think they've possibly changed it then. I think they might have had it so they used to stand in the terrace, and now it's this end.
I think what happened, because obviously a bit of a local derby, Luton and Cambridge, was we had the end like there where the Derby fans are, but we also had like a third of the stand.
Oh, okay. The one that Oh, yeah, because there was nobody in that bit. I don't think I actually took a picture of it, but no, I did. There you go. So that's
we was in that.
So there's like completely abandoned bit over there where there's nobody there.
Yeah.
So I guess that's reserved for overspill away fans. And there's a great big gap over there that's just kind of there's nothing there.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a big pile of crap right behind that pylon. Yeah,
Cambridge. We're kind of rivals, I suppose. It was pretty cramped. Sorry,
it's a cracking old stand, that is.
Yeah, it's a good one. Did you you mentioned in the review about the toilets or something? The trivia about the toilets at Cambridge United is that I understand from watching BBC Look East at the time that the FA Cup third or fourth round game against Manchester United at Cambridge plus the replay paid for the toilet block at Cambridge United. So if you went to the new Cambridge United toilet block, you can thank Manchester United for that. So there we
go. I didn't, because like we almost missed kickoff, so like I went straight in and sat down, and that was it. I talk about in the review how much Cambridge reminds me of Kenilworth Road.
Yeah, I get
that. That main stand was a complete maze. Like the fact that I got lost in it should give you an idea of.
It's a mini Kenny almost.
But also there's just little bits of weirdness like this. So this corner over here where it's like the stand just kind of stops. This is all terracing off to the right, and then it just stops. And this is like the back of the entrance.
Yeah.
And then there's just like a little row of people stood there just in the corner, and there's a really crap scoreboard.
It's eclectic, I think, as we would say.
Yeah, I quite like it. So like, and this is coming out the ground afterwards. So like this is the big metal staircase that just that we had to find our way up to come in. So that also reminded me of Kenilworth Road with the metal staircase up the outside.
Yeah, across the road. So
yeah, so I quite like Cambridge.
yeah, I like it as a place.
Somewhat run down, but it was a nice contrast to go from Wembley to that.
Bring you back to earth to a little bit.
Yeah, it was like I really appreciate that football can be enjoyed at all levels, and I get as much out of like the big grounds as I do the small ones. And I think I was lucky that I got a good game at Wembley, but like Cambridge and that level, that League One level, that seems to be my sweet spot.
Where football's played.
Yeah. So yeah, I had another really good time at in a League One ground.
That should be the tagline for the League One. League One marketing board. Was it Sky Bet League One, where real football's played?
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
League One. League One's my league. I think I've completed quite a high percentage of.
Yeah, you're doing quite good on League One.
Of League One grounds. I don't actually have the number to hand, which is unfortunate, but I will be able to find it in a jiffy.
I think when I looked at it last, my highest ground somehow was the Premier League. It's it always fluctuates depending on what Fulham is doing.
Yeah.
What Fulham and Norwich are doing.
Fulham and Norwich, they usually trade places, don't they? So I've done 14 grounds in League One, so I'm on 58% of League One.
I'm on 5 on League One, which isn't too impressive actually. But
yeah, my second highest is the Premier League, so I've done 10 grounds in the Premier League.
I think the Spartan South Midlands Premier Division is doing quite good for me.
I think I really have focused on the league grounds because they're
the ones,
with the exception of League Two, which I've hardly been to. Like they're all creeping up there.
Yeah. So, well, they're the ones that have the street cred, aren't they? I suppose. Someone says, "Oh, you've not been to Portman Road?" Oh, no, I've not. Maybe one day. Yeah. Maybe one day I'll get to Ipswich.
Maybe this year. You never know.
Maybe. But yeah, I think that was our sort of compact 4. I did a few more, but as you have seen by my number, but you know, I did a couple of Sunday league games when I was in Germany. There's controversy over whether they count or not, but whatever.
If you did 2 halves, that makes 1 ground.
Yeah. Well, there we go. I did a half of 2 different games, but that was good fun. I'm going to count them. There was a game that I saw from the outside of the ground in Austria, which I didn't count. So
I said you can't count that. You weren't even in the ground.
Yeah, so fair enough. That's fair enough. But yeah, I think.
Yeah, well, that'll do us for this one. We'll be back
eventually.
Somewhere in early December, I think. Where I'm sure we'll have some grounds to talk about. It might have been a spectacular trip somewhere, but like that's probably not going to be the case. We'll
we're playing it by ear, I think. At this
point. We'll have something to talk about when we come back in about 4 or 5 weeks time. So thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please hit the like button and subscribe to the Arn Eddie channel because it helps YouTube business and stuff. Not that we make any money out of this, but
I do.
Do you?
Yeah. You're not?
Bombshell.
See you later.